Hello, welcome to what might become a series of me reading Edgar Allen Poe stories, except I say random crap to hopefully make it more entertaining, and I have a speech impediment, so it's kind of hard to understand what I'm saying. Anyways, today we're starting with the Telltale Heart. True, nervous, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my sense, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken? Maybe. Who gives a fuck? And observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. He's gonna tell us the story. Oh my god, are y'all excited? It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my brain. But once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had not desired. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was one of his eyes. It resembled that of a vulture's. A pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man. He's gonna slime out homeboy. And thus rid myself of the eye forever. Dude needs a chill pill. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madman know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wise I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what that's a hard one. We're moving on. I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him, and every night about midnight I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently, and then when I had made a opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all close, so that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrusted in. I moved in slowly, very slowly. Heyo. That's funny. I'm so funny. So that I might not disturb the old man's sleep, it took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges on it creaked, and I undid just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture's eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye had always been closed. It's because he's sleeping, and homeboy's so fucking crazy he didn't figure this one out yet. You gotta use your thinking cap, brother. Anyways, the eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I look upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moved more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers. The sagacity, that's quite a word. Pick out the dictionary. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he had heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as pitch black. It was pitch black with thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through for fear of robbers. Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in. I was about to open my lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tiny fastening, and the old man sprang up out of bed, crying, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done night after night after night, hearkening, I fucked up that one again, to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or grief. Oh no, it was a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well many a night, just at midnight, when all the world had slept. It had welled up from my own bosom, deepening. It was a dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I know it well. I knew what the old man had felt, and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in his bed. His fears had been ever growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but he could not. He had been saying to himself, "It's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor, or it's merely a cricket who has made a single chirp." Yet, yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with all these suppositions. I lost my spot. Hold up. Yeah, but he had found all in vain, because death enveloped the victim, and it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little, very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it, and you cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like a thread of a spider, shot out of the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open. As I grew furious, I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound too well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of the drum stimulates the soldiers into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held my lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder, every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excites me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder, louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern. I leapt into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him, and I smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on within the muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon his heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eyes would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and arms and legs, as one does, usually. And then I took 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out. There was no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught it all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by the neighbors during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police officers, and they, the fucking officers, of course, because who else not, had been deputed, deputed, They had been to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The sheik, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search, and search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest upon their fatigues, while I myself, in wild audacity and my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat. This is almost done, I swear to y'all. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chanted familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached. I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued. It became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and it gained definitiveness until, at length, I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, now I had grown very pale, but I talked more fluently. With a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations. That's a great word. Oh my God, we're getting good ones today. Thank you, Mr. Edgar. But the noise steadily increased. Key and no, that's the wrong line. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over and over, continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. What? Is it possible that they had not heard? Almighty God, no, no, they heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. And this I thought, this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this decision. Derision? Derision is a word, guys. Who would have thunked it? Oh my God. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now again the harsh, louder, louder, louder. Harsh, harsh, harsh. Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here it is, the beating of his hideous heart. And that's the end of that fucking story, because he's an insane motherfucker. And he was hearing his own heart, and he didn't realize it. So, yeah, y'all do with that what you will. I'm going to put this up, and this video is way longer than I wanted it to be. So, yeah. Bye-bye.